You're about to explore a collaborative approach that is somatically centered to unpack the idea of problem not being the problem but coping is, that was originated by Virginia Satir, family therapist and pioneer of family systems work. Enjoy.
Welcome. My name is Jörg Dierkes. I'm a psychotherapist from Germany, and I've been studying with Steve for 20 years now. Oh my God, so long. I would never imagine that back then, and so I'm very happy to be able to share today with you my experiences and some exercises that I find very, very helpful. And I'm going to do that not alone, but with.
So that's my turn. Hi, my name is Eva Wiebrecht, and I'm the second half of this presentation, and delighted to be able to do this together with my friend and colleague of almost a decade now together. We both represent the IAGC in Germany and are trainers in the generative change work. And I also represent my passion, which is Virginia Satir's work, and I'm the director of the International Virginia Satir Institute. And together today, we share a theme that is really holding a passion of the two of us together. We use the quote from Virginia Satir, though, which is, "The problem is not the problem, coping is," as the theme of the next 25 minutes of our masterclass.
And actually that was I think the main topic that touched me the most when I began on my journey, is what we're going to cover in this amount of time, and give you sort of in a nutshell what touched me so much is, how can I change from one state to another and effectively cope? So I was always amazed how many ineffective coping mechanisms I learned in my life, and it was such a astonishment and surprise and enlightenment for me to come in touch with coping mechanisms that are essentially effective. And I was searching for that for my whole youth. And so I was so happy to know there are traditions that have effective coping mechanisms. And since then, I practice them regularly. I teach them to clients and in mindfulness classes and generative trance classes. And so Eva and me, we want to share a bit of that passion, how to transform inner states, obstacles. And so we hope we can invite you on this little journey with us.
Yeah, it's really nice to know that that's something that was really carving something essential out on our personal growth journey, and we share that. And then, interesting enough, we realized that these days of where we're facing collectively crisis times and challenging times, and if you take the original word of the Greek term crisis, it actually means turning point. In German, it means Entscheidungspunkt. So there's a turning from one direction to another direction. It's usually used in the health area about, am I leading towards illness or towards health? So we thought that this would be a really good connecting topic that we could collectively make very practical use. And we both share another tradition, which is to work somatically, because the body really has so much wisdom and has so much knowing, and is usually our authority that gets activated a lot of times quicker, more direct than the mind can follow. So it's one of those instruments that is really helpful to use on a level of creating awareness, but it's also very helpful to use as a transformational possibility because it gives a very quick possibility to change from one to the other. That's why we chose to include a method that is somatically guided.
And of course, there are many different traditions using the somatic importance and the somatic involvement. And we guide you through a little coach exercise at the beginning. And of course, you know, the CRASH acronym. And there's also other traditions that that are used for that. And I will be guiding you through what Steve Gilligan also often uses when about how to deal with negative voices or obstacles or attacks, is what Peter Levine, the amazing trauma stress researcher, and he developed the somatic experiencing approach. And he talks about the different copings, the 4 Fs in English, and fight, flight, freeze, and fold. And I was thinking about to give you a little example so you get a little bit of idea what that means as coping. Mm-hmm. And I was remembering an incident I had in my hometown. I was riding my bike at the biggest, where the streets cross in my hometown, and the cars had red. So the people who are walking and the bicycles, they get green. So a little boy, he has green, he rides over the street, but the car, he rides over red, and so the boy is flying in the air, is crashing on the ground. And I was like maybe 50 meters away and having my observer with that. And so instinctively, the first thing I did was to breathe, to coach. And then I was interesting because I had red light, so I had to see what the people are doing. So some people immediately who observed it also went to the driver who crashed the little boy, and they were like shouting at him, "Are you stupid? It was red. Can't you see?" So they are in this fight mode. Mm-hmm. Then I saw some people who didn't want to get involved, who flight, they went away very fast. You can see their fear. I don't want to be involved in this. So they went away. They flight out of the situation. And interestingly, only a few people try to take care of the boy. It's like they were forgetting because they also focused on fight or flight. And the boy was fold on the ground. He collapsed. And then he got up. And then I was near him. And I saw also he was a bit in a shock, like in a freezing mode. So I asked him, "Hey, come here." And I asked him to look at me and say, "Please do with me together." And we did that 3 times. And then I asked him, "What's your name?" He said his name. I asked him, "Do you have, how does your body feel?" He says, "Well, that's quite all right." I said, "Whoa, that's great." And then he said, "Well, I do karate. Maybe it's because we learn this all the time." And I said, "Wow, you're such a great karate." So we got into conversation, and you can see how this little guy became more in his normal state again. And so he was more what we could call flow then, was not really flow at that point of time, but he was present. And then the ambulance came, his grandmother came, he was taken care of. It was so interesting to see all these different copings from the people who are involved. So we connect differently. It's the same situation, so many things happening, so many ways to cope. So I'm gonna be guiding you through fight, flight, freeze, fold, flow. And then you can feel what feels most resonant for you.
Mm-hmm. And there is a different tradition, which is basically thinking about the same ways of coping, just to language it in a different way, which is coming from Virginia Satir's languaging and observing family systems when they were really in a stuck state and not coping very well with each other, what were the different body stances they would put on in a conflict situation. And what she found out was that there are 4 negative copings, which are, one is blame, and then the second one is placating, the third one was computer, and then the fourth one, distracting. And that can be either way, a distraction that has a lot of motion, or a distraction way where I'm more freezing or faulting. So I go inside and maybe even check out and dissociate. And so that's another way of thinking about copings that get activate in the need of stress. I mean, in the situation of stress, and then the need of survival and the need of protecting ourselves, and where we do get triggered and run on automatics. So whenever there's an amplified field, a situation that is really inviting us, now get ready for some action, because here you need to survive. And sometimes it can also be a fantasy. It can be, I'm imagining I'm in danger, but it's not really true. So imagined or real, when we are in a certain stress situation, we get activated and invited to use our automatic copings, which are then the ones that are helping us to survive. We don't see them totally negative, just to put that on the table too. You are all the positive result of survival copings and mechanism having been successful. Yet the downside of them are, when we are needing to be really present and to be really listening with our full senses and being aware, and when we need to be really connected and present, then they are really in the way of being in the here and the now. And so we want to have a positive idea about copings do work, but sometimes they're in the way for us to be fully present and really use our senses to make a really good and centered decision, especially in times of uncertainties where we need to bring the best of who we are to the table to really create new, creative, outside of the box, new ideas about how we want to create the future. So our idea is, and that's something we both learned, is to use and understand those copings intimately, curious, open-minded, open-hearted, through a body connection, and then use them as a way of linking them to a more helpful direction. And in the 2 traditions, we're talking in the Satya Model about congruence, which is an alignment of what am I seeing and noticing and feeling inside of myself, and that been aligned with my thoughts, and then my behavior is showing to the outside. So I'm here, now, present, and I'm centered in this moment and this time. And that is what she calls a helpful coping that we want to move towards.
And also, I think important is just one note to that. If I talked about if you center, so these coping mechanisms are there for a long time, like fight, flight. I don't know how many thousand years we have that, and they are important at some times. So they're not per se negative or bad, but what we want to learn is to center and then feel, is this the best response in this situation? And then if we have that, we can choose creatively what is the fitting coping for this. And there are certain base states that allow us to be that creative in choosing which type we need. And this is, I think, again, a lot to do with practice. So Eva, should we move into practice, or is there anything else you would like to add?
One sentence from Virginia Satir, which is, awareness leads to choice, and that's our guiding principle. So we really are working on awareness. The more we are aware, the more we awake, the more we conscious, the more we can actually start producing and carving out a choice. Before, I don't know what I don't know, and I do only know what I know. So we want to bring up to the consciousness to know more about ourselves, even though it may not be helpful, so that in those moments we can start to open a door for a new choice and really lead ourselves, navigate ourselves in a wanted direction. And that's why we chose a practice that will guide us through three different stages. Stage number one, that will be, we just want to invite you from a coach state to curiously take on all the different copings that we were just briefly touching upon, so that you have a somatic representation of that. Then in the next step, in the next phase, we want to invite you to do a little test run of linking and connecting your preferred coping and stress that you know about yourself, that you just discovered yourself, to then connect it to flow and congruence, so that you can change the one to the next and create a little rehearsal, create a little practice, just like an athlete is practicing for the competition. And then the last phase will be, now we want to apply it to a specific situation where you anticipate that you may get triggered again, and assume that this coping will get activated again in this moment, to then already project yourself out and make sure that you are putting now your practice into the competition that's called life, so that you really bring it on to the real situation and be prepared for it. So those are the sequences that we will guide you in next.
Great. So in short form, coach state, then explore different coping possibilities, then move between, like a trance dance between polarities or two selected coping mechanisms you like to work on. Fourth, positive future orientation. How do you want to apply that in your life, which is so important in this time especially.
Yeah.
So let's start with the coach.
Let's start with the coach.
And let's start with the body and the movement.
Yeah. I usually like first to invite everybody to just connect to your breathing. And maybe also notice just a natural flow in your body. There's always motion in your body naturally, unless I stop it.
And a very easy method from Zen meditation is be aware of these little movements in your underbelly. That if you breathe in, your belly rises a bit. If you breathe out, you will realize it sinks back a bit. That's also the place where your belly center is. Very, very grounding center, the belly center. You might make a movement with that. What is a movement that will initiate, that will represent center?
Center.
For me, it's something like this.
And for me, it's something like this. So we invite you to take a fluid body movement to represent center. You can notice a beautiful cleansing breath that allows you to connect to the opening, the word I'm open, and allow that to give it a somatic, fluid expression. Open. And make it a fluid, continuous movement that has a beginning and an end and a continuation. Beautiful.
And then from there, awareness.
And as you see us, you find your own way of representing being aware.
So you can practice with us a posture for movement, for awareness. And then the next, connected.
Connection, connecting. And again, let that body speak for you. Nothing to think about. Just let it flow.
Feel the connection as good as you can to yourself, to the nature, and connected.
Connecting. And you can sense and move your body with the word holding. Being able to hold yourself, others, maybe your experience, your thoughts, holding and creating a space of hospitality.
Like a container that's able to hold many different energies, good space. And with that, coach elements, energies. We invite you to move through different coping possibilities expressed via somatic modeling. And the first one is fight. So you can do this again with us, go into a fight mode. Feel how that feels. Feel your eyes, your face. Feel that energy. Fight a possible coping. That's okay. One possibility. Feel how that feels familiar with you or not. And then let's release it. Let that go. Take a breath to recenter. Come back to coach, center.
And in another language or another tradition, we can think about fight as the idea of blame. So I invite you to let your body represent blaming. And you want to somatically do it with the way of touching it, experiencing. Notice what you notice in your body to understand. And then you can allow to release it again. Let it go.
And then the next possibility of coping with the situation can slowly move into flight. So how does your body express flight? Flight, and feel how that feels. Is this a familiar coping for you? Is it something you know from your life? Flight. And then release that. Come back to center.
And so on the other tradition of Virginia Satir, flight could be represented as placate. So I invite you to have your body express what placating looks like. Traditionally, she would represent it like this. You want to do it with a curious mind. You observe your experience. Maybe also sense what's the positive intention of that coping. How's it helping me? How does it feel in the body? So that you understand more. That's something I like to use. To then just touch it and then release it, let it go again.
And from there, move into the next possibility of a coping. Freeze. So slowly let your body move into some freezing mode, and also notice the positive intention of this. To feel how that feels. Does it feel comfortable, uncomfortable? Do you know this? Do you use it often? And then from there,
Release
that, breathe.
And then the connection and the Satya model to this is computer. Traditionally, she would represent computers like something like this, kind of with locked. You go into your mind, you're holding with tension. And you can sense what's the positive intention of this? What happens in my body? Where do I hold most of the tension? How does my body feel then? Just so you touch it, you experience it, to notice, to become aware, to then choose to release it and let it go. Let go. Recenter.
Be curious about the next possible, so many ways to cope. The next one is fold. Sort of one possibility, if it's maybe too much, feels too much, like a collapse. Fold. And feel how that feels. How present you feel in this mode. How creative you feel in this mode. Positive intention of this mode. Feel how often you use this. Is this familiar to you? Like a habit. And then take a breath. Let that go.
Really let it go, release. And then we want to invite you to explore the last coping on the menu, which is distractor. And something like this would be, I like to move, so for me it would be more in movement. It can also be completely leaving. So what does distraction look and feels like for you, and what does it do? How is it helping you? How does it show up in the body? So again, you want to feel it, you want to touch it, you want to notice, and then choose to release it. Choose to let go.
Then there's more. So I'm inviting you for the last coping I'm gonna guide you through, which is flow. So I'm gonna ask you to let your body, how would a flow coping mechanism look like for you? Get into flow, soft movements, being able to move freely. How do you cope when you're in a flow? How does that feel for you? Does it feel familiar? Does it feel like, whoa, this really feels good. I want to do that more often. Check with your body how that feels. Sometimes if you want to do it more, it means that your body's telling you, yeah, that seems like a good one. But for now, you can release that. Come back to this position.
So in the Satya perspective, we would talk about congruency. And one way to think about that is I honor all that is present, which is me, here, and now. So you can maybe have your body answer somatically, me, here, which is the space, and then now, which is this moment. And how you can somatically represent that me, here, now mantra as my somatic version of congruence. And then you can sense what happens there in your body, what becomes available, who do you become, what's possible. So that now, in the next phase, we want to invite you to creatively link that the two copings, make friends, befriend them, link them, bridge them, so that one can inform the other. And as we befriend them, they can be used as a stance, dance, intervention.
And for that, you might take the two ones that you'd like to explore, that you'd like to get more linking with. So choose the two that feel most resonant for you.
Choose the one. For me, it's placate.
For me, it's distractor and flow.
And let that inform flow. And maybe include the presence mantra of me, here, now. And you
So we have one coping. We say, my desire is to go more into this. So we train ourselves. This is my desired state. Yes, this is how it feels.
In order to rehearse it even more deeply, allow yourself to go back into the coping that you tend to take on mostly, so that you take it, notice, feel it, and then choose to make the first transition, to link it to flow. In my example, I need to let go of my shoulder.
And in my example, I just realized that the way I look is really important. How to focus in a soft eyes way. And then we stay there, and then it's like life. Something in life happens, even though you really want to stay in this desired state, maybe all the time. Life happens, and like automatically, inevitably, this old coping that might be not so effective here now, it's just activated, it's triggered. And so we ask you go back to that. Feel, oh yeah, sometimes in life it happens. And automatically I'm go on autopilot, and I'm using the coping which might not be the best. And here we can realize it, we can bring awareness into it. Wait a moment. Awareness can lead to choice. And you can say, oh, I choose to go into
whatever version is most congruent for you, to how the coping inform a choice point to move to congruency or flow. And what we're really curious about, what is the first turn, the first switch that you just became aware of, what you could do as a first entrance to alternate from one to the other? That's good to know. Maybe tension in eyeballs or tension in shoulders.
maybe a faster breathing, maybe some coldness in the body. So we learn from ourselves in this sort of back and forth, so we can teach ourselves
That's
to
right.
become more aware, to become a bit faster.
So your
In a
body
sense.
is your teacher. Body is your healer in this.
And then once we train this, we can see, all right, this is like preparation step, like swimming in the movement just. Now we're going to dive into the water a little bit and invite you to sense yourself for the future. What situation you might really want to use this. In which situation it would really be helpful if you could change into the desired coping from the one that you'd like to change to. So we're going to guide you through a little future orientation.
So maybe you can already put it a little bit in context. When is a time and what could happen specifically that may be a trigger, an outside activation of your preferred coping?
And that can be different things, that can be in the area maybe of your family, maybe your children and the interactions with them. You want to stay in flow, but something happens and you get angry and in fight.
Maybe.
Might be in a professional context with your colleagues, or you wanted to say another context.
Yeah, maybe it's a special word that when you hear it, it just activates something. Maybe it's a sound or the news or a certain overflow of information, whatever it may be. Allow yourself to be informed by it now so that you give it a realistic context to already notice, to be prepared for.
So we put ourselves a bit like on a timeline. From the centered, open, aware connected, holding space. Sense yourself moving forward in time and in a centered way. Go into, imagine the situation that you'd like to work with, where you really need a good coping. Then you can imagine, maybe it's a word that somebody says, maybe there's some trigger, and here we begin with the practice. So it gets triggered, and then
notice what you do in this instant moment to protect yourself. Maybe you can there also inform yourself, that's interesting. I'm sure that makes sense. It reminds me of, now is a time to reconnect, to flow.
so you imagine you're doing the transition. You imagine yourself in the challenging situation and how you change, how you transfer. This is really the important. Bring awareness into that situation where not enough awareness had been before. And play it out. This is how I want to be. This is how I want to stand. This is how I want to breathe. This is how I want to think, talk.
As you have done that once, we invite you to repeat it one more time so that you imagine the sequence. Here's the trigger that comes from the outside, or maybe a thought from the inside, whatever it may be. This is what I do spontaneously. Great to know. Maybe you can say, thank you, that's interesting. And choose to transform it to congruence, flow. Now, I choose to consciously move my body in a more desirable way. Reflow.
You might sense what's the difference in this state. Really explore. And then we can bring everything that's helpful from this imagination back to ourselves. Integrating whatever has been helpful into the system, into our organism, the body, which has learned.
So you really want to gather in everything that's been interesting, supportive, and helpful, awakening, consciousness rising. Maybe practice the most important mantra of today to be reminded of, which is thank you. Thank you for giving the time to explore, to notice, to learn.
Take a few moments to honor yourself, to honor your body, this beautiful organism that can show you, teach you so much. Maybe smile to yourself if you like. And also honor the amazing different possibilities that are in your organism to cope. Isn't that amazing? And we get to choose more and more in cooperation with our organism.
Maybe also letting yourself know that now, whatever runs on automatic, for the first time, you notice you can use that to align that with a new way of coping. And as all good new things of learning, it's good to practice. It's good to train. To let yourself sometimes fall back into old, to have that be an awakening to reconnect to this new learning pattern.
So it can be a lot of joy also to explore that and to see what can come out of it, how the life can slowly, steadily bring more light or whatever you like to invite in. Mm-hmm. So I hope you enjoyed this session, this exercise, which we can formally close this exercise now and get our orientation more back to the outside. So hello, Eva.
Hi, Jörg.
And before we said we wanted to close this session with a little ending note, and shall we do that?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I begin. We talked about, or Eva talked about, awareness leads to choice. And one of my most beloved teachers, Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, there are two quotes that I want to share with you that touched me so deeply. The one is, he said in a workshop where it's about habit energies, like these habits we build. And he says they control our life. He said, we don't want to be lived. We want to live. We don't want to be lived. We want to live. And he says, we sleepwalk through the day so often on automatic pilot. And once you bring mindfulness, coach state, congruency, flow into there, you begin to be able to live your life. And then if you have that, then the next quote I liked so much is be compassionate with yourself, commitment to non-punishment. Mm-hmm. And in that he said the most important lesson in life to learn for him is the lesson of love. Mm. So we hope we can honor and gratitude ourselves again and again, knowing it's human to sometimes get into the copings we don't like so much. We can practice compassionately. Right. That's my ending note.
I always need reminders, so I did create this little medallion which is saying, in case that we run into old copings that we don't find so helpful, that we can talk to ourselves with a, sorry dear, I'm sorry that happened again, even though you made other plans. And to let yourself know, thank you for noticing, thank you for doing it. And now you can practice a little bit more. And to finish with our beginning subject, the title and the quote, which is the problem is not the problem, but coping is. I want to say coping is not the problem, but the way we cope with the coping, that is determining if I move it to a loving, self-compassionate solution to wake up more and more out of the automatic. So I tend to celebrate every time I cope and I notice, and I may even sometimes be able in the moment to change from the coping that's out of stress and automatic into flow. But even though I just do notice, it's already an element of awakening. So let's celebrate all of these levels of learnings. So in that sense, I want to say thank you, my dear friend and teacher and partner in this.
Thank you so much too. Thank you all who who took part in this workshop. And may you all be well, healthy, happy, peaceful, and have a good journey.
And stay safe.